Hey everybody, I'm Kat Caldwell. This is my channel Floodlights, and we are continuing our reading of Proverbs. Today we are doing Proverbs chapter 7, and forgive me, but I am reading from off of my computer today. But we are reading from the Message Bible, as usual. I find it a very good translation, especially for sort of the millennial generation and below, and I just really like how comprehensive it is. So, Chapter 7. Dear friend, do what I tell you. Treasure my careful instructions. Do what I say, and you'll live well. My teaching is as precious as your eyesight. Guard it. Write it out on the backs of your hands. Etch it on the chambers of your heart. Talk to wisdom as to a sister. Treat insight as your companion. They'll be with you to fend off the temptress, that smooth-talking, honey-tongued seductress. As I stood at the window of my house, looking out through the shutters, watching the mindless crowd stroll by, I spotted a young man without any sense. Arriving at the corner of the street where she lived, then turning up the path to her house. It was dusk, the evening coming on, the darkness thickening into night. Just then a woman met him. She'd been lying in wait for him, dressed to seduce him. Brazen and brash she was, restless and roaming, never at home, walking the streets, loitering in the mall, hanging out at every corner in town. She threw her arms around him and kissed him, boldly took his arm and said, "I've got all the makings for a feast. Today I made my offerings, my vows are all paid. So now I've come to find you, hoping to catch sight of your face, and here you are. I've spread fresh, clean sheets on my bed, colorful imported linens. My bed is aromatic with spices and exotic fragrances. Come, let us make love all night. Spend the night in ecstatic lovemaking. My husband's not at home. He's away on business, and he won't be back for a month." Soon she has him eating out of her hand, bewitched by her honeyed speech. Before you know it, he's trotting behind her like a calf led to the butcher shop, like a stag lured into ambush, and then shot with an arrow, like a bird flying into a net, not knowing that its flying life is over. So friends, listen to me. Take these words of mine most seriously. Don't fool around with a woman like that. Don't even stroll through her neighborhood. Countless victims come under her spell. She's the death of many a poor man. She runs a halfway house to hell, fits you out with a shroud and a coffin. So that is chapter 7. And knowing society today, if there's any feminists listening to this video, she's probably shrieking. But if you've heard any of listened to any of my other videos, really, Proverbs is all about wisdom and living your life wisely, right? So there's a couple different things that we can learn about this. Because God created us, He knows how we are. He knows how He's created us to be. He knows the strengths and weaknesses of women, and He knows the strengths and weaknesses of men. And there's a pretty big difference in those general strengths and general weaknesses. So I think it's interesting how He's really pointing out the weakness of men here and the strength of women that, if we're not careful, can be used improperly, right? And if you listen to comedians, they talk a lot about the differences between men and women, and it's funny how through the ages, this sort of male stupidity, being led just by the desire of sex. There's lots of jokes about this, and how women are more wily. They're sort of more they have more intent, they plan things out a little bit more. But there's good and there's bad in that, right? So if you're a grown woman and you've been in any situation with a man or men, you probably understand the control that you can have on men through your sexuality. You can use your sexuality to literally lure men into your bedroom, because especially during a certain age, men are pretty much all about sex. You know, clearly they do other things as well, but their hormones are kind of out of control. So I'm not advocating for that. This is just sort of biologically how we are. And God knows that, because he made us like this. He also knows sort of how these strengths and weaknesses become highlighted because of the downfall of man, right? Because we are living in a fallen world. And so women will use their sexuality inappropriately to lure men, and men allow themselves to be kind of stupid. I mean, Solomon compares this young man to a calf. I mean, if you've been around animals, I grew up on a farm. Cows are dumb. They're cute, they're sweet, but you got to tug them back into the pen. They are not the smartest animals. So he's really comparing this young man to kind of an idiot, and really because he believes the woman, right? She's sitting there lying in wait. Really, she's just waiting for an attractive man to come by. And she says, I've been waiting for you. And he believes her as though she's actually speaking specifically about him. So there's two cautions here. One to the men, stop letting your hormones control you. And one way to do that is to simply not walk into the lion's den. Don't walk into an area where certain women have proven themselves to be more about using their sexuality for bad than for good. Search out a woman who you are willing to spend the rest of your life with, who will be a companion for you. This is definitely not an idea that we live out in our society these days. We don't encourage men to look for a companion, a lifelong companion, a wife. We encourage them to go out and experiment, allow themselves to be guided by their hormones. Well, that can get you in a lot of trouble. Especially back then, you are found with a married woman and you will probably be killed by her husband. I mean, we have different laws these days, but, this young man was literally playing with fire. However you treat a person who becomes your sexual partner, that's really how you're treating yourself. If you go out and you have one-night stands, you are disrespecting the other person and you're disrespecting yourself. And we've talked about this before. Check out the other videos if you want to hear more about that. So he's warning the young man, don't be led by your hormones. And he's warning the woman, hey, you have a lot of power here. You don't have to say a whole lot to bring a man into a bad situation, to lure a man into your sexuality. Women, we really do have a lot of control. And again, this is not talking about assault, okay? That is a whole different subject. We are simply talking about out in society, in our culture, how men and women interact. Women have got the upper hand on the sexuality. We just do. We're more beautiful than men. We're nicer to look at. And we just have sort of that know-how. We read people better. And I don't want to, intelligence isn't a thing here. It's just sort of how we see the world. We just have this upper hand on our sexuality. And if men are going to be led by their hormones, we can definitely use that to our advantage, right? And don't tell me, if you disagree with me, it's because you haven't been in the world very much. And so what he's saying, Solomon's definitely focusing on the young man, but of course you have to go back about 3,000 years, at least, maybe more. I should look up my history, and sort of see what society was. And this young man could have really ruined his life, or as we said before, be, killed because he's with this woman. And so he's saying, this whole idea of being led by your hormones, being sexually manipulative, she runs a halfway house to hell. Well, that's not a good place to live. It's not a good place to go, but it's certainly not a good place to live. Do you want to live and run a halfway house to hell as a woman who uses her sexuality to manipulate everyone instead of using her intelligence and her drive and her God-given abilities? No, God gave you sexuality, of course. Women are very sensual, but it's not a weapon. Do you want to run a halfway house to hell? It sounds pretty horrible. And men, do you want to go to a halfway house to hell? That sounds pretty horrible. So again, we are getting lots of wisdom from King Solomon and just how he observed the world, observed the people around him. And again, humans have not changed a whole lot, have they? So that wraps up chapter 7. Word to the wise: don't go out looking for that seductress or that seductor. Keep your hormones under control because you can. Until next time, I'm Kat Caldwell. If you like this video, please subscribe to get notified of other videos coming up, and please click the like button and share as you wish. See you later.